The idea of cocktail making robots isn't new. In fact, there's a cocktail robot exhibition that's been going on since 1999 called Robo Exotica. There's a wide range of cocktail bots out there, from ones with industrial arms and $160,000 price tags called RoboBar to the more artsy DIY types. Our bot is called Bartendro. It's in the lower left there, and we recently funded on Kickstarter. There's a lot of really hard engineering challenges that goes into making a cocktail bot, which is what makes it so fun. And when we first started, we were inadvertently starting siphons that we couldn't stop and just making a glorious mess. Our first project was a water-to-wine cooler, where the water would glug and wine would come out instead. And so we started researching all these components, valves and pumps and sensors, and we were finding that they're really expensive, but we enjoyed working with them. And our friends got a kick out of it, so the next logical progression was multiple dispensers making cocktails. So we started, there's a lot of options to solve the problem. We started looking at the easiest thing, which was these single shot pourers commonly used by bartenders. We thought we could put some on bottles and tip the bottles over and get your perfect 1 ounce pour, but pretty much forget about splashes and dashes of anything. But now we're starting to see a bunch of these bots where they have the platform that you put your glass on, and they stop at each bottle and trigger the mechanical valve, and that dispenses your booze. But the slowness and the lack of resolution was kind of a turnoff. So we looked at gravity-fed solenoid valves, and gravity's non-linear, so if you have a full bottle versus a near empty bottle, you're going to get a drastically different flow rate. So we attempted to compensate for this by having a container with an IR range sensor that looked down at the liquid level. And but IR bounces differently off of different liquids, so we had to add our own float there. And even then we were getting really inconsistent results because we didn't compensate for viscosity and density, which really also affect the flow rate. So unless we used an expensive flow meter, gravity valves were out. But we like the gravity-fed aesthetic, and we wanted to use bottles instead of containers. So we found these cool quick connect fittings we can put on the bottles. And you can flip the bottle over and nothing comes out until you snap it into the machine. But getting air to properly go up into the bottles was problematic. Supporting all the different bottle shapes and sizes was pretty hard, especially with drunk people bumping into it. So we looked into peristaltic pumps, and those were the most sanitary solution we came across. Named, of course, for the action that happens in your esophagus when you swallow food. They create a vacuum when a set of rollers squeezes on some tubing, and with every revolution you get the same amount. And our initial search found that these pumps were just way too expensive, so we started looking into making our own, and learned about things like occlusion, how much you can squeeze on a piece of tubing, and things you have to do to prevent the tubing from advancing up into the pump as it was running. But our pumps weren't perfect, so we spent a lot of time searching for off-the-shelf solutions that would be a good fit for us, and we finally found something. And we added magnets and Hall sensors to it to close the loop and get better accuracy than the typical timing-based dispenses. But solving dispensing was only part of the problem. We also wanted to we wanted to know when we were running low or out of something, so we would prevent people from making a bad or partial drink. So there's a lot of physical properties you can exploit to detect liquid presence, but we're dealing with a wide variety of liquids, so it becomes really hard. Our sensors had to pass the Bailey's test. So optical sensors, for example, failed because Bailey's is IR opaque, whereas vodka is IR transparent. So we experimented a lot and talked to a lot of people, and one of my old colleagues who worked a lot with underwater robotics suggested a differential pressure sensor, and so we experimented with those, and those have actually been working out pretty nicely. But our bot is a platform, and we've thought about adding all kinds of things to it, like breathalyzers and reaction-based games that detect if you're sober enough to get the top shelf booze. Kind of our initial dream was to have a YouTube-type model where users could create drinks and someone on the opposite side of the planet can recreate the same exact drink and rate it. And we built this ecosystem where people can sort drinks by ratings and popularity and by region. And yeah, so our hardware is open source, and we encourage people to go check it out and build on top of it and make even cooler things. Thanks. Yeah, so the big one is called Bartendro 15. The little one is called ShotBot, and they're Wi-Fi based. So if the Wi-Fi lets me in, it looks like it just did. Should be able to dispense you a shot right here. Wi-Fi is being finicky. Well, yep, there it goes.
Oh, that's cute.
There you go.